couple of 100 kilometers away, there's a secret cave. Nobody knows about that except for the old fellas. There's a exact replica of the stone site. So when the old fellas do ceremony in that cave, somehow they can teleport through from that site over to there. People keep talking about Aboriginal spirituality, and I kind of yeah, we don't have a word for spirituality, you know? It's not a separate thing from the biological. Everything's this big, vast web of cause and effect relations in the informatics of the system, you know? Boom, that color of the flower, that brings in this one, and then that insect's noise brings in that bird. It's just a big brain, you know? All of creation's like that. So that's why we don't have separate words for time and place.
Whoa.
But there's just misfires and massive brain damage and all kinds of stuff going on.
That's the mind virus. I call it anti-you. It's what separates you.
Yeah.
It always separates you from the field.
And this is kind of the role of evil. It's kind of a pattern breaker. Creation, destruction, same thing. The system has to have these innovative responses, and then the system sort of changes a bit and it becomes a little bit more beautiful.
What would be something that you could say, hey, do this one thing and your life will be richer?
Ants.
Ants.
Yeah.
Tyson Yunkaporta is a bridge to one of the oldest lineages of Indigenous wisdom of the Australian people. 60,000 years of knowledge of how to live with the earth, their understanding of the right way, the law of nature, and how to act in accordance as a human being with that universal self. His ideas and understandings may have similar fragrances to our own Indigenous cultures, but are also radically unique, and we explore both the history and also contemporary philosophy about how we can all live in the right way, in the best way, in the truest way, in accord with spirit, in accord with the highest fruition of ourselves, and how this applies to relationship, law, punishment, reward, all of the things we see in society. Tyson's perspective is absolutely invaluable. Grateful that he's a bridge. He's also an author of an incredible book called Sand Talk, which drew me to him in the first place. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce this podcast with my new friend, Tyson Yunkaporta. Tyson.
Yeah.
My man.
It's singing out to all the Gadigal mobs and country here. And, all our old people.
Yeah. All the ancestors.
Yo.
All the relations.
That's it.
So the production company that has this podcast and publishes my books is called Chakaruna, which is the Quechua word for bridge and bridge person.
Yeah.
And I really feel like you embody a bridge person, very much so, because you're fair-skinned and you can walk in both worlds. You can walk in the city of Sydney and do all of the things that a urban city-goer could do, but you can go deep in the bush and learn from the old ways, from the old fellas, as you would say. And you've been able to synthesize those different worlds and bring that about. But it hasn't necessarily been easy for you either, right? Because when you're the bridge, able to be both, in some ways you're not accepted by either. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I don't want to be a bridge. I don't know. I only found out I was fair-skinned a few years ago. After I moved to the city, because I spent all my life out in the bush, and then, I moved 2016. I got my first mobile phone, moved to the city. And then a couple of years in, I looked in the mirror one day and went, shit. So that was all just the sun. Anyway, it was really disappointing. Yeah. Find out how pale I am. I don't want to be a bridge. But, you got to do what you're told. I do know you use that word. I know a Quechua fella, Ngawi Flores, and he is a bridge. He's that word. He's that thing. Yeah. He's one of those magic people that does that.
Well, you may not want to, but you're doing it. because
Yeah.
you've bridged this wisdom that's been anchored here in Australia. And we were with one of the old fellas, as you'd say, Uncle Dean, and he said, some of his people go back 60,000 years. Stories from 60,000 years of tradition and a way of being and a way of knowing. And that's just one element and one aspect of the people that you've spent the time with and learned from and listened with. And a lot of it is about listening, and you've distilled a lot of that wisdom and offered it to share. And so in that, which world are you more comfortable with? Are you more comfortable in the Tyson in the city, or are you more comfortable out in the bush?
Well, yeah, obviously in the bush, the city's awful. Yeah, I've had a really horrible time last few years trying to manage that big shift. Yeah, I've done it with a bad grace. Yeah, but obviously I like being back up home, with the mob. Yeah, I don't know. Like in our way, you're sort of nothing on your own. Like none of us is sort of special. Like we don't have any, I'm this or I'm that. It's just, us.
It's the family.
Yeah. Yeah, you're always in an us, like an us two or us only or us all or, bigger or smaller groups that you belong to. But you're always in that, and that's always who you are. And if you ever step out of that and go like, ngai, me, I'm me, that people will slap you down for it, That's shame.
In your book, you use that as a pronoun, us too.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, I receive that as an intentional way to try and dismantle this myth of separation that we have that tries to place everybody else as other than us.
Yeah.
Like you're different than me, you're different than me, you're this color, you're this identity, you're this religion, you're this belief system, you're this ideology. No, you're us too.
Yeah, well, things, when you're translating, you're translating across cultures and languages, stuff gets lost in English, and just those limited first-person pronouns. I'm not going to force you to use my Indigenous pronouns or anything, so don't panic. But yeah, it just, so if we translate the forms, little aspects of the grammars and verb morphology or whatever, into English and just sort of tweak that meaning a little bit there, it can, that can carry more. I could write like 3 chapters on what it is to be connected, or I could just call you or call me and you us too. Like, and just do it there.
Yeah. To practice that reinforcement of the connection is it's almost like a living way. I mean, again, like you said, there's a lot of the pronouns are used actually, in my opinion, to create more separation. It's actually I'm part of this different group.
Yeah. Yep.
Whereas the pronouns that you're using are more like, it's about inclusion, not separation.
Yeah.
It's about like, actually, no. Let's just get rid of all of the other separation and all of the circles, all of these borders that we put around our own identities and ourselves and our tribes and just say like, let's get real here. Same mother, same father, all people. Let's get real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many ways of saying I and us too. Like you add, adding different suffixes on there, meaning, like us belonging to him, us belonging to her, us belonging to them, that's really specific. But there's one pronoun for like I as a separate thing, but you only use it if you're trying to start a fight.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you
Interesting.
don't know who you want to start a fight with. You just know that you want to fight, so you go and you start walking, through the community, and you just start yelling that word.
What's the word?
I was just like, ngai, ngai.
Ngai,
Ngai,
ngai.
ngai, ngai,
Like, let's fucking go.
Like, you know, so
my...
ngai is like that part that's I, like that self in relation, you know, but then double it up, ngai, ngai, it's like blocking it off and saying, I'm me. Ngai, pam, man, I'm going to smash somebody. And eventually someone will answer, come out.
And somebody else will answer, ngai, ngai.
Punch on for a bit. And
there it goes.
Yeah.
And then you extrapolate that globally, and that's really what nations and tribes and different people have been doing for thousands of years, right?
Yep. But it's, I don't know, it's good to get it off your chest. Small scale like that.
Right.
You know, have a spectacular battle.
Yeah.
Everybody walks home. Yeah, there's freaking rules, you know, for fighting. You know, we actually have rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, like, you know, and there's always, like, you can't fight out of sight of people. Because that's like, you know, that's like you're trying to do something bad there, like hurt someone or murder somebody. If you're doing it sneaky away from people, you sort of do it out in public where everyone can see. Everyone comes around. You might have 100 people watching, and everybody watches and makes sure you don't, you know, break the rules. Like, we don't kick because that's dirty. Yep. No pulling hair or anything like that. And certainly, and once you score a good hit, like that's it, you step back and you wait. You can't hit someone when they're on the ground. And you know, as people, see you done BJJ and all that.
Yeah.
You know, that there's that thing they always say, like, oh, every fight ends up on the ground. Like, you got to have your groundwork down. That's like, no. You never go to the ground.
Right, because
like,
it's in a community and it's you're actually fighting.
You knock someone down, you like step back and wait for them to get up. It's just you're not going to kick them while they're there or jump on top of them. It's like, what are you trying to do? Yeah. So I don't know. We have rules.
Have you ever been in one of those fights?
Yeah, and you don't get hurt though. You know, it's kind of, you know, you get a couple of bruises or whatever. But it's there. It's like really demonstrative. It looks like when people see it, you know, and they're not in the community and they see it, they just think, oh my God, they're killing each other. You know, it's really sort of, you know, hey, loud, demonstrative. Everyone's shouting, you know, and then, you know, police come and go, oh, it's a riot kind of thing. But it's not. It's everyone getting excited about someone having a fight. And it's really spectacular. And then everyone walks away.
Tell me a story about a fight. Why did you get in a fight? How did it happen? Tell me a story.
Let me think. Okay. And this was where the fellow done the wrong thing. Yeah. I don't know, so my niece comes in one night and she's like, Uncle, help. Like, he's killing her. And I'm like, what the? So I went running around. Next door.
So you're in some huts. There's huts around to set the scene.
Yeah. And there's a man doing the wrong thing. You know, he's
hurting his woman,
using
some
physical
kind of domestic
coercion
violence type of situation.
Yeah, to try and force her to, I don't know, whatever men think they're doing when they're doing that dominant stuff. You know. Yeah,
and someone came to you and said, "Uncle."
Yeah,
there's some bad shit going down.
Yeah, and so I got between them, you know, and
did you go nine?
You know, push back? No,
because
it
wasn't about you.
Well,
this was more about you.
There weren't people around yet. People were starting to come in, you know, but it wasn't all there. He was, he'd gone the wrong way. Like, he'd gone into, he wasn't in the right way of fighting or anything like that. He was just murderous, you know. Yeah. And so I don't know, it kicked off like for a bit and just enough to get him back away from her and the kids and everything. A few people coming around, but he didn't wait for everyone to show up. He just started laying in, and then I decided, all right, well, I'm just going to see I'll see where this goes. Like, you're ineffective right now, you know, because he's not fighting proper way, you know. Yeah, so I stopped shaping up and I just stepped back and just put my hands to the sides and I said, you go on, knock yourself out, which weirdly he did, literally. Yeah, he was like, doing the big haymakers, smacking. He did dislocate my jaw, which was, I don't know, that was annoying for a few weeks. I got like the glass jaw. I've always had a problem with that one. Yeah. But I never noticed until after, and then I'm like, oh, again. Oh. Anyway, you lose weight that way. That's all right. Yeah. Anyway, so then he came in for a really big hit, like really big one, and he missed. And he fell down and he knocked himself out. Yeah. And then, like, when he woke up, then he's running around and he's getting other people going, he hit me. He knocked me out. Yeah, he came up to me for no reason. Tyson, he's doing.
And then he immediately started playing the victim.
Kill this mother. Anyway, so he chased me around, trying to find me, but I was gone, finished. Kids were all right. They had something else to be angry about. Yeah. I don't know. He came up to me the next day and tried to have another go, but I was just like, no, it's not happening. You do it the right way, You call everyone out and we'll punch on. We'll see how it goes. And then, I don't know, so I showed up for that later. And he showed up and he gave me $50 and said sorry. Yeah. Because he kind of sobered up,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, so that's the wrong way. Yeah. Stuff. What he did, I did it the right way. Like, because then I would have been complicit if I joined in without the right setting.
Right.
It's all set and setting. For fight, it's like, it's an altered state, You like get into that other place and, yeah. And, like all ceremony, all ritual is altered states. Some people use plants to help that or whatever, but, if you're doing it, you're just doing it. Like you clapping them sticks there and, that'll get you in and then get everyone else in and you get connected and you're in that altered state. And then the work you do there, and what you call in, what you sing up, that stays there,
Right.
Yeah, what happens in ceremony stays in ceremony, I guess.
Right.
So you don't walk out of there with the altered state. And you don't walk out of there with the things that you're doing in that altered state either. So you set circle, same with the fight, set circle, and then you, sit in circle, but you got to close circle too, Close circle when you're done, and when it's closed, that's it. That stays there. Yeah. And then you sweep. You got to sweep after. You got to sweep the ground. Because that's all got to disperse. Then,
the energy.
And you're not supposed to carry things away. I don't know. We're different from a lot of other, like Native American is kind of, we were talking about that last night. They're individual, like they have visions and stuff and they have quests and shit, yeah. We've got a lot of like Native American brothers, we do ceremony with and travel back and forth. And yeah, they got a different way where they have very individual experiences. They have the collective stuff as well, but they also do their own thing where they're fasting,
the vision
fasting
quest,
alone and doing.
All right, I want to talk about the individual versus. I want to talk about the individual versus collective, but I also want to share something else. I think what you're saying is incredibly important because recently I was playing a heated game of basketball, and the basketball was getting to the point of aggression where it was on the borderline of multiple fights breaking out between different people playing. And I called everybody together and I said, I don't care what happens on this basketball court. Whatever goes down, it has to stay on this court. And as soon as we leave this court, we're brothers and we're friends, and there's no remnants of whatever it goes. So however this goes, even if you guys want to square off, we'll hold the space like a ceremony and you guys can go for it, but it stays on this court. And then when we leave this court, it's done. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, if there is going to be some kind of conflict, put it in this context. For me, the ceremonial land was the basketball court, and whatever happened there happened there. But after that, you're back to being brothers. You're back to being like us too.
Someone carried it off?
It worked.
Carried the beef out, or like
no, it worked.
They left
it worked.
It there. All right.
They went at it. They went hard. It didn't go to fists. There was people got thrown around into the fence, and it got aggressive. But at the end, everybody, like, we all came together. We closed the circle. We like closed the circle, and we stepped off the court, and then after that, it was all laughter and and
you got it. That's where I keep telling, like, all these intentional communities always want to, can you talk to us? Like, we're doing an intentional community. And, and even the old established ones, like that one in Scotland, and, a few of them famous ones where they have problems, down the track. There was one where there was an arsonist was just burning their houses down in the community. But every one of them, like, the problem, like, I look and I go, it's not going to last. Because it's always about peace and calm, like, and they're all about relatedness, but it's not really relatedness. It's just like this idea of, friendliness, peacefulness, calm, and everything, okay, respectfully, I have some feelings about what you've just done, and we're going to have a healing circle. And,
right.
But they're still feeling it. They're like talking soft, but they're not soft, so that shit escalates. Thank you. Yeah, that's just going to escalate. So I keep telling him, if you don't have like a ritual way of like working out your conflict, aggression, if you haven't got an outlet where, and not just this idea that men do that. It's like, no. Women, estrogen is the most volatile fucking substance on the planet, brothers. Like, women need, as if you look up Aboriginal fight videos, like on YouTube, most of them's women fighting, like doing the street fighting. Women have got to punch on. Women have got to have some way to do the aggression thing and get that out, same way that we do.
I think that's actually one of the things that I think men have. We have these controlled environments where we can get out our physical aggression, like whether it's a basketball court or whether it's a jiu-jitsu mat or whether it's something like that. Women in the aggregate don't have as many places for that. And where it comes out is this kind of much more toxic, biting, catty, talking shit, kind of passive aggressiveness. And actually, if you just get it out, there's really nothing much left that's there.
It's that border work that happens with, I don't know, any culture that wants to fuck around and do empires, whatever. They always end up doing borders around the genders, and a lot of that's around like trying to control women, so that's the first thing that goes. Like when our culture's really domesticated, when the women are sort of weaker, become like the weaker sex, because they're not really like that. They're formidable.
Well, in the natural state, they're squatting, tongue out, like pushing a baby out of there, splitting their body to birth something, like with a primal scream.
Proper big,
long exactly. Like that is the natural state.
Yeah,
and to remember that natural state. I think we're in a time now where it's important where we actually remember who we are as an animal.
Yeah.
And I think because of your immersion in the old ways, 60,000 years of living connected to the natural world and the human being.
Law, mother's law, grandmother's law, auntie law, all, women's law is like, it's that creation and destruction, like hold the keys to life and death. Like they're the ones that like control that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that, and they have that authority. So it's it's I don't know, it's kind of hard to look at sometimes these ideas of femininity as this kind of, soft, fragile, cloistered sort of thing, Like she's wearing clothes where she couldn't climb a tree for shit if she tried,
And so you think that this was an intentional strategy of empire. So I collectively call these forces which seek to elevate some above others and dominate empire, just capital E empire. It's just the name. So empire has many different faces. It's had religious faces. It's had, national faces. It's had different other faces and movements and et cetera. But empire is an energy in and of itself. And you think one of the strategies of empire is to actually domesticate, in particular, the feminine wild and actually make them more incapacitated and remove them from their raw power.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's something that you think is an intentional strategy?
To sort of downgrade the feminine right across the board, because how are you going to do what you need to do to the land, to do this expansion, to do this extraction? How are you going to do that? So there has to be this kind of complete suppression of
the mothers and the
power.
daughters, and they would be like, no, you can't do this.
The land
this is
itself.
our mother. This is
exactly. And the men would wouldn't. Like they have to end up with this idea, this feeling of disdain, But see, that's what you can offer people when you want them to act against their own self-interest. If you're like, okay, all you men, we want to break you and control you, and we're going to need you doing really shitty jobs for really long hours with not much reward. And we're going to need this so we can build our whatever
empire.
It is we're building. Yeah. So you men, you're going to have to get behind that. But you will have someone to look down on. You'll still get to be boss in your own house. You're the boss. So you get to control your women, your children, your daughters. These are the ones, you're the boss of them. So, so you'll have that.
Like this shit rolls downhill kind of mentality.
But then also, they also have to identify an out-group, evil outsiders, and be able to go, and we hate these people over here. But we're going to bring them in, like to do the really shitty jobs that even you won't do, We're going to bring them in, and you can look down on them. No matter how bad things are for you, you'll know you're doing better than them, And
so this is like a giant ego trip.
How does your house work? Like what was the energy before? It was like animals that you harness and humans, like slaves or whatever, But then half of this energy, especially to run everyone's house, that's been like on, being able to just have a slave there the whole time who's going to have all the babies and grow up all the babies and keep the house clean and take care of all the food. You got this unpaid slave. So these, civilizations and the domus there, that's all powered by, female energy, like, before electricity, I guess. That's the power. Horsepower, woman power, slave power, And these are all classes of people who no matter how shitty, we're treating you in your workplace, it's like, well, you're doing better than them, and yeah.
And so that was the bait that allowed this kind of pyramid hierarchical empire structure, because an empire, they are always building towers, they're always building pyramids, they're always trying to create this hierarchy. But the psychological key to doing that is, as long as you can place somebody underneath you, then you can convince that person that, okay, at least, I'm above you, but there's someone underneath you that you can shit on. And so you can, then there's someone underneath you that you can shit on. And then you just pass that on until there's finally that final scapegoat that ultimately you can sacrifice.
That's it. But then it's like, well, what's that, what has to change in a person to make them want to shit on someone? Like, like what would make you prefer scarcity, as long as you can shit on someone else, to abundance that you have to share with everybody else, Like you could have extreme abundance, but everybody gets the same. Like what has to happen to a person for them to stop wanting that and move into preferring like a shitty life of scarcity, but at least we're there on top of other people, Like what has to go wrong with them?
I've always been a collector since I was a kid. Whether it was sports cards, magic cards, comics, stamps, or coins. And as I've gotten older, I've transitioned to collecting original art. I also believe in precious metals as one of the safest and most stable stores of wealth. The impossibly cool thing about my new company, Metalmark, as part of the Aubrey Marcus Collective, is that it combines both of these things that I love. Fully assayable and recoverable fractional gold notes, paired with impossibly beautiful, cool, and collectible limited edition art. So if for some reason you don't like the art anymore, or the art loses its value, you can always just keep the gold. If any other class of art loses its value, all you are left with is paper, or in the case of NFTs, pixels. And if you are just starting in collecting gold, instead of having to drop $2,700 on a coin like this, you can get in for less than a Benjamin. It seems like the first domino is force, right? Like it's implanted with force, and then it's reinforced by these psychological carrots.
Yeah.
But the first domino is somebody comes in, they have more advanced technology, better steel, better guns or something, and they actually take power by force. And then that initial wound,
they spread that disease.
Then they spread that
trauma.
Disease. Yeah, the trauma then opens that up.
I think it's not enough. I think the real trauma, it's not in the violence of occupation or the genocide even, but it's the continuous trauma of forcing people to live within these systems. Like when you So I said before, I got my first mobile phone in 2016, and that's like, I still feel like that daily. I feel the trauma daily of having to change like my entire worldview based around this thing that I have to carry in the city. Otherwise, I can't log into my computer at work because of the dual verification thing. I can't park a car anywhere. I can't pretty much do anything without this phone. So if I don't have it with me, I can't survive in the city. It's that having to live under that system, and not having a way out of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's that reinforces. Mm-hmm. And then you derive comfort from the moments when you're able to feel disdain for somebody, feel hatred for somebody, feel superiority, because you're online there and you're flicking through, and it's like, this bastard, he said what? Yeah, no, cancel him. he's gone. You know what I mean? You get to feel that superiority. You say, oh, these people coming in, these people coming in here, why are they coming in? Yeah, they're criminals, you get to feel that, you get a little spike, and I guess that's where it gets you. Yeah. But in our way, it's about you lose part of your spirit. Because all of that behavior, that's empathy disorders. We talked about those empathy disorders, that narcissism and borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Those ones, they're all empathy deficit sort of pathologies, Mm-hmm. And it's that where you lose that part of your spirit that connects like with other people, that see, your spirit can't really function properly unless it's connected. So for me, this ngakpian, like big power, big spirit, this, in the belly here, that's, active and connected with your belly power, and then we're, us two then, Mm-hmm. And the rest of me can't function, and the yarn can't really work until we've really got that strong, until it's one, that idea of being of one mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, we say of one belly. So when you lose that part of your spirit, then that's, what they call empathy, I guess. Mm-hmm. So you're not connected, Mm-hmm. So you're always low on your energy, your spirit. It's incomplete. And so you're constantly reaching to pull things in. Like you want that emotional connection, but all you can do is sort of sip someone else's pain, really. Try and get that. Mm-hmm. So if you can control someone else, or be cruel to someone else, or hate someone else, then that sort of gives you this illusion that that's getting topped up. Mm-hmm. But as it comes in, it's just going straight out. And so you have to keep that constant stream coming in. So you got to feed it. You got to have your sort of stable of people that you vampire off, in spirit. You got to have your victims,
yeah,
that you draw on, and they're usually in your family, you're cruel to them, and you pull that into yourself. Uh-huh. And that's that. We call people like that living ghosts. And that's usually because they've done something wrong in the land, in sacred place or ceremony or something like that. And part of their spirit gets taken out of them and stays there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
One of the more remarkable things that I've encountered is there are certain people who haven't been touched by empire, certain Native people who haven't had the oppression of the colonial, forces coming in, the empirical forces coming in. And I've seen that in Peru, and I've met with some of the Yawanawa in Brazil, usually deep, deep jungle, where actually just the missionaries didn't penetrate, the governments didn't really penetrate that far. There's a level of happiness, I would say, that I've never actually experienced in any other group, where there's just a sense of joy and bliss and dance and play and laughter that exists from the kids to the adults to the elders. Everybody has this lighthearted spirit, but there's not that many places where you actually get to see that. And what I imagine is now, for us in America, we encounter our First Nations people, whether it's the Navajo or the Lakota, and they've experienced so much trauma from empire, because there's no place in the United States that hasn't been touched by the U.S. empire. There's no place in Australia, I would venture to say, that hasn't been touched by the British/Australian empire that came in. So we don't actually get a good example of what it was actually like before these forces came in. And it's not that there weren't still wars and there wasn't still cruelties and there weren't still fucked up things happening in certain places. Of course, it's not all complete utopia, Pollyannish. I understand that. But the one thing I can say from my own personal, lived experience of experiencing the Yawanawa, experiencing these secluded tribes off the Amazon River in Peru, is there was a real joy. And I feel when I sit with my Native American brothers in the U.S., and I can feel it, also from you, is there's a kind of pain from the trauma of having that's actually not the way that it once was. Things have been changed in a certain way, and it's sad because it prevents us from being able to see how good it could be. We don't have these living models of, hey, what the fuck are we doing? We could be way happier with way less. But because the trauma has impacted people so much, we don't get to see that often.
Yeah. Well, it has really seeped in. It's so it's been in our politics, geopolitical, but then domestic politics as well, in media, and the broader sort of culture globally. That's been there for a long time, but I think everybody's feeling it now that this isn't just something that you see, on the TV or, with the power brokers, what they're doing to each other. This is like at every kitchen table now. There's this irreconcilable kind of, hills that everybody wants to die on, and, exclusion, going on, it's in every house. And that narcissistic abuse that goes on, every family's got at least one asshole, and look, those happy people you're talking about, they'll have stories about assholes, like they'll have old law stories, about people who are bullies or, people who, go mad with power and try and control other people, or, damage, take too much, etc., etc. We all got stories for that, and that's where we keep. That's how we know how we're supposed to live, because we still have the law, the old law. We still carry the stories. So even if we don't get to live that every day, we do get to speak it every day, and share it, recall it, and do ceremony and these things, and keep it alive that way. Until such a time as we can, live that again, So we're holding it, and we're keeping that for everybody, and keep trying to share that with people and bring people slowly in, under the law of the land again, like that. But all old cautionary tales, there's bastards in all those old stories, right back from the first, the first people, you go to the story of the first people ever, and there's, one of them's going to behave like a bastard.
Well, you were telling a story about Albino Boy, which is actually a story about the certain tribe getting superstitious, casting out. Why don't you tell that story? Because that's a way that a story becomes a type of moral, a lesson to imprint values on a culture, because you retell this story about what happened. So tell the story of Albino Boy and tell the story of what, where it went. Yeah.
Well, I don't have the right to tell the story. I can refer to it and summarize, kind of thing. It's from Wankamara people, and the elders did give me some songs that I can sing, around that. But just with people, not with
cameras,
digital, etc. And stuff like that. But just generally, if we're talking out into the world, that was a long ago story. A albino boy was born, and then there was just a couple of just shitty people, started rumors, gossip, about him, and saying he was a devil and all this sort of thing, and ended up creating a big moral panic.
So
a lot of the
setting
story,
the scene, everybody's dark skinned.
yeah,
And then an albino boy is born,
yeah,
someone with white skin,
yeah,
which is a natural aberration that happens to all animals, including humans.
yeah,
So this happened, and it happened to a human. And then some people got that kind of xenophobic, ethnocentric, this is not, you're not part of us, and they started being assholes.
yeah. But that wasn't like the natural response of the people. You know, it took
Just
a couple of
people. Yeah.
It took a couple of, you know, troublemakers to sort of get those lies going, get that wrong story. And, you know, like, you know, a lie goes 100 miles before the truth gets out of bed. You know how that works. So, you know, you got the old people who are sitting there, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're going to have to investigate this devil thing. And so they're sitting down and doing their due diligence with, you know, he's obviously not a devil, but anyway, all right, well, I guess we got to do what we have to do to prove that he's not. But that takes time, and sorry, too late then. It's like everybody's in a panic. And so they kick this boy out. So for me, it's part of that, you know, it's that cautionary tale, you know, is about that problem that can happen with gossip, false witness, you know, especially where, you know, you can take facts and just lean into those ones and lean away from certain other ones and just skew things away from where they should be. So it's that wrong story there. Anyway, they did that wrong story. And so that boy ended up getting banished out on his own, you know, still when he was just a boy, like 10 years old, you know. And, yeah. And he ended up like he didn't mess around. He didn't skip leg day. He got into it out there. He was like, he got real strong, like strong lifting rocks, you know. He ended up building a really big stone site, and you can see it. It's like, it's bigger than Stonehenge, and, you know, lots of standing stones, processions, stones that have been like carved down and polished and shaped. And then another one sat just balancing, you know, on top, and it's been there for thousands of years, just like that. And you touch it and it wobbles, and it's like, how is that still there? Yeah. So, yeah, he made this big stone site, and, you know, and just became really powerful sort of magic man, and ended up being a revered entity in that place, and someone is still revered today. Yeah.
And there's legends about what the power he was able to harness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this goes into the you know, we're now talking about deep magic and, you know, these just stories. But if you wouldn't mind, share some of these stories, because they're kind of mind blowing, whether they're true or not. Of course, we haven't been able to verify it ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're all true in that they give you an accurate model of reality that you can, you know, use as a predictive model.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, so I don't know. Let's say I'm looking at geospatial data, you know, which is an incomplete data set, and, you know, I'm doing like, I don't know, boundary control methods and uniqueness theorem and stuff like that to do the maths, to process the dark data, and like you do to de-blur a photograph, you know, to figure out where the groundwater is. You know, it's about making a model, you know, and where you can do predictive stuff. And our stories are like that. So the stories, you know, there's the story level, simple level, but there's more levels of detail. So whether or not a giant serpent formed the ridges and valleys and the topography of a place, whether or not that was really a giant snake that did it, is no one's really concerned with that. But just the fact of being able to stand there and go, well, that's where his belly went, that can help you. Well, you actually have like a really accurate topographical map to know exactly where all the water flows in different seasons. And so then you can accurately predict and know in the right season where the underground water will be and where to dig for that, because you have that story, you have that law, you know, you have a good model, you know, an accurate map, you know, and that's what the stories do. But also for every behavior, you know, for the right morality, the right law, what you do and what you don't do. What happens if you do the wrong thing, a lot of stuff, especially about, coercion over other people, and particularly women, children, things like this. A lot of them are tragedies, the old stories. But they're all cautionary tales.
Well, to just finish the thread on the albino boy story, this stone site, the story is that it could be used to teleport people from one place to another place.
That's what the old fellas told me. There's like a couple 100 kilometers away, there's a secret cave. And that's like, nobody knows about that except for the old fellas. It's a really secret place. But they reckon there's like a miniature model, like exact replica of the stone site the albino boy built. And that, so when the old fellas do ceremony in that cave, that somehow they can teleport, through from that site, over to there, and then vice versa, so you can make a jump like that. And they were talking about that there's lots of different places like that, like a lot of the different stone sites, there's, you can move between them in the old ways like that, which is pretty cool. I'd love to be able to do that, but
So what is it about the cosmology of your people that actually allows for that possibility to even be entertained in the mind, right? Because that requires a cosmological ontology that's different than our cosmological Newtonian ontology, right? I mean, first of all, the stones are alive. Like, one thing is it's a fully animistic world where everything is living and contains spirit, right? So that's one ontological major paradigm shift. But there has to be another ontological shift that allows for this possibility to be like, no, this could happen. This is possible.
It's really hard. It's like trying to reverse engineer something and then ask why. You know what I mean? It's like if you had a hot dog and then, in a place where people only eat hot dogs but they've never had a steak. And then, they're asking you, well, how is a steak possible? How's that possible in your ontology? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, and then you somehow got to try and reconstruct that out of the sausage. That's probably a bad metaphor, but yeah. I don't know. That would be that's like a whole different worldview.
Well, it is a whole different world. Everything's alive.
Everything's alive, but everything's, connected as well. And
everything's
in
connected.
Relation. Everything's in relation. Has a totemic classification and relation. And
what does that mean? Totemic classification.
So you might divide everything into like categories of like light blood, heavy blood, or something like this. So usually there's a moiety kind of division, and everything that exists as either this classification or this classification, and then it breaks down the other way, and then there's diagonals and how things are related, but then there's avoidance relations as well, things that can't go together, things that do go together, and that's like, so everything in creation ends up being modeled in that way. It's really complex,
So there's like a relational, it's like a relational ontology where everything is connected through different points of connection that are all unique depending on the substance and the substrate and the place and the magnet, whatever.
So you'd usually you might say, well, an ant is an insect, and freshwater crayfish, that's a crustacean. They're in these different categories, but, like in our way, we might say, well, they're the same category because of the dreaming, because of that story, but also the role they play. They do carrion disposal. Like they keep, so the ants shape the waterways, like where they place their nests. That's around like caring for, limiting the toxic stuff that can go into the river. But then in the river, the yabbies, the little crustaceans, they're performing the same role. They're like the underwater ants in the river, and then the ants are the above ground yabbies on the bank, if that makes any sense. So they're related in that way, but then all of this is in a system of just, like informatics that kind of gets dismissed as spirit, magic, kind of thing. But there's signals, like every sound you make, that signals a response in something else. And then the response from that, triggers a response in something else and something else. And everything's this big, like vast web of like cause and effect relations in the informatics of the system, that people have started to sort of discover and, in the modern world and get a bit woo about the rhizomatic stuff, the mycelium, networks, and like, oh my goodness, the fungus
They're all
does
connected.
This. And it's like, well, yeah, fungus does that, but like everything does that. Like, look up top of the tree too. That's like there's fungus all through there, but everything else as well. And it's all these big networks of signals. It's something's got to happen to trigger that tree to start flowering, and then that color of the flower that brings in this one, and then that insect's noise brings in that bird, and then that bird makes a call, and then that call brings in the sharks from upriver, down to the coast, and then those sharks there, that brings the people down to get the shark, and then and the people are there, and then I don't know, they don't want to get bit by mosquitoes, so they might burn the grass there. And then that's exactly the right time to burn the grass as it happens, not just get rid of mosquitoes, but, the other trees along there and bushes and the grasses, those seeds will only germinate if they have smoke and heat, and it just so happens that they're dropping at that time. It's kind of like everything. It's just a big brain, it's like neural processes just running through entire living systems, and, all of creation's like that. And it's gotten a bit pathological, but it still is that. Everything still is connected.
Yes.
But there's just misfires going on,
and
barriers and massive brain damage and all kinds of stuff going on.
Well, that's the mind virus. So, in the our Native American tradition, they call it Wetiko. And the Wetiko mind virus is part of, I call it anti-you. It's what separates you. It always separates you from the field, what I call the field, which is the connected intelligence. That's, complex, but not complicated. Like complicated is like an airplane, but complex is like the way that everything is interconnected. And we have the ability to remove ourselves from the field with our own, cognitive apparatus, but in the right way of relating, it's all connected in this web. And that fundamental, I think, if we're getting down to it, that's the fundamental paradigm shift between the old ways across multiple different, aho matakuye o yasin is the Lakota way of saying all my relations, which doesn't just mean to people, it means
that's to human, non-human, everything.
The rock nation, to the insect nation, to the bird nation, to the plant nations. You know?
But even so, all, everything's an entity. This so like even a color is an entity. And that's something that you might bring into ceremony, and that has sentience. So like red came into the things we were doing at dawn today.
Right.
And that red, that had an impact on place, had an impact on us. It's a sentient thing. And totemically, that was calling in relations into that place that I called out in language too. That was calling in totemic entities for me of blood and feet and legs and hands, which those things are totems as well, but also urine. So, Yeah, like usually when people are like, I am the jaguar. I had it in a vision, what's your totem? What's your spirit animal? And I usually I'm cheeky and I pick that one and I go, piss. My totem's piss. So, yeah. I mean, because that's one of them, you don't just have one totem.
Yeah.
Like you will have like that main totem. So for me, Brolga, but then that's connected to so many other things.
Right.
That's connected to a season, and that season is an entity. And
Yeah.
I've the water level and the kind of water that's there in that season.
So I was in a deep ayahuasca journey and I felt the clear presence of an entity. Undoubtable. I knew an entity was present and I said, and I actually felt this almost like histamine response in my nose, but there was this fragrance and it felt like things were like blooming and I was like, who are you? What are you? What is, and the entity responded, spring. And I was like, spring? A season just came to visit me in ceremony? Yep. Like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And so for me, these moments allow me to interface with someone who knows the old ways like you.
Yeah.
And say like, yeah, I get it. Like when you say the seasons are an entity, I'm like, yeah, I know. I met spring.
And then there's other entities within that.
Of course.
So there's whole, spring wind isn't two words. You jam it together. That's a whole separate word. And spring wind is an entity that comes through. But that brings things with it as well, It brings in other things. And everything in that system change. So that's why we don't have separate words for time and place.
Whoa.
So time and place is one thing because, you can't just be in a place and that's it, because it's always changing. Like most of the biodiversity there, like, we say, this place is a biodiversity sink. That's where all the animals live, That's where this endangered species lives. It's like, well, sometimes, it all changes. It changes all the time. Half the biota is migratory, and it will migrate to other systems, maybe across the world. Like where I live, there's a sandpiper. And you see when the sandpipers are there, and then when they're not there, they're pissed off up to Siberia. Like they're in Siberia, and then they come back down. Down to like Victoria at the bottom of Australia near Antarctica and they hang out there for a bit.
That's a long trip.
And so, and they are like, totemic animals there. And, but, they're known to be the migratory. And like even the ones that stay, within that bioregion, they'll still migrate seasonally, like above and below ground, like they might hibernate or they might, go somewhere else. Even the fish will take off and there'll be different fish runs coming through. Everything moves. I mean, everything moves. So time, place, they're not two different things.
So this is such a radical new way of thinking. That's one of the reasons why I loved your book so much is because it's actually inviting an entirely new way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
So, all right, right now we're in this room.
Yeah.
And someone would say, this is a room. We can rent this room, whatever. But this room is not the same room as it is right now with me and you in it because we're connected to the room. We're not entirely separate from the room. So this is a new room and a new time and a new time and place collapsing into one. This is a new interconnected thing, a moment that's connected that's actually different.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. Like my kitchen table is just a kitchen. It's not the same thing as when it's filled with people, drinking and laughing, and it's a different place and it's a different time. So even thinking like that, it's like it changes your whole organizing logical structure of your brain. Which is really important, I think.
Because this room's a different place, seasonally, because the light, even during the day, the light's going to be in different places. It'll change fundamentally. You had an event here yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was this You're talking about what a perfect space it was, eh? And that it was a different place when you had that event.
Yes.
You know, different time, different place. You know, and this one seasonally. Yesterday was hot as hell, and then today it's freezing. You know, which that we didn't like that at dawn today. You and me going up. Right up on the point in that wind, like half naked for ceremony, it was
getting
like
in the water,
yeah, and then having to go into the sea after that stuff. It was a different place. I went up there like yesterday afternoon to the same place because they had to bring me in the right way, before I could come in painted up, and for ceremony I had to come in and they had to make sure the place was all right with me, and it was a different place. Different place from when we came up, because different time, different place. Yeah, you're in a time place. So that's why the old fellas say, if you don't move with the land will move you. You can't just come in this room and go, oh yeah, this is that room, and I'll sit in the same spot, because it's different. Mm-hmm. And it's made out of sand, and like most buildings are made mostly out of sand. You need that in the concrete and the glass, everything else. And, sand's running out and most of it's getting dredged out of the sea. So you don't really have to worry so much about rising sea levels like they talk about. Oh, don't worry, it'll be 200 years before it rises 5 centimeters. But it's like you got to worry more about the land sinking into the sea because they're dredging the sand out of that bastard all the time to build these big buildings right on the coast. And, so we're in a place that's moving in deep time, it's moving towards going back to the sea where it came from. One way or another. Oh, and it's the layers. If you ever get a chance while you're in Sydney to see what's underneath your feet here, like what we're walking on, we're not walking on the ground. You're like 20, 30 meters above the ground. If you go down onto the street, there's all these historical layers, and it's just these big, vast drops down to where the ground used to be.
Wow.
It's terrifying. Like when I saw that, it was like I feel really precarious, like walking around Sydney, because I know it's all just this thin skin over the top of a whole heap of like tunnels and drops and like, skeletons and murders and, ghosts. Ghosty ass place. And you look down in one of them holes, you look down deep, and you'd think, like if I fell down there and I didn't die, I'd kill myself straight away. I'm not staying here. I'm not gonna wait for someone to rescue me. Yeah. There's bad things under every city. Yeah. You go down, there's layers.
All right, so I want to talk more about the darker side of things, but I also want to just tap into a moment when we were in our dawn ceremony today. Uncle used some sticks that were like this, but bigger.
Yep.
And he used them to let the land know he was talking. He was talking to them. He used the word talking. I'm talking to the land to let them know that we're coming.
Yeah.
And using that sound to the living, breathing entity of the land to say, hey, we're coming in. And he was listening back to make sure the land said, okay, yeah, come on in. It's like he was knocking at the door of the wild nature that he was walking into to say, hey, is it okay if we come in?
Of just not even wild, just the everything,
Yeah.
So he was calling out for the sun as well.
Yeah, he did that for the sun.
Totemically for his people, that's grandfather totem.
Yeah.
That sun.
And he told me to grab a stone before I went into the ocean.
Yeah.
And throw it and put my intention and announce myself and throw it into the ocean to let the ocean know before I was coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the creatures. And so I throw the stone into the ocean, say, okay, ocean, I'm coming in, and did my best to listen, and ocean seemed cool with it.
Yep.
And I cruise right in, and immediately I see this giant manta ray.
Yeah.
Who's just like right there looking at me. And then there's this cool shark that's underneath this ledge. And it's like the ocean greeted me in this in one of them. I mean, it was a 15-minute snorkel in kind of murky waters on a cloudy day, and I saw some of the most incredible creatures I've seen.
Yeah, yep.
And
In one of the most depleted marine environments that you'll find anywhere. Like, yeah.
Right. And so
but they're doing that work there to restore the cray weed. But
Right.
it's not just that, just planting out the weed. Like, they're making sure people are having a spiritual relationship. So you got Aboriginal people like teaching, they take CEOs out there, like, like periodically and get them to go down and connect with the place. So they're getting people to connect spiritually with the place. Spiritually is a silly word, but it's for them to come under that law. And like, when they announce themselves like that, just that idea of that big paradigm shift of, I'm entering a place, so I got to call out. I got to let the place know who I am and, what I'm doing there. And, and then if that place likes me and opens for me and, because I'm at the edge there, you're at the border. And that border, that's where you stop. And it's not a place of control. It's a place of making kin. Border relations is about kin making, and about facilitating access rather than blocking access.
Uh-huh.
So country and the entities of place, they're there to facilitate your access there, but you got to kind of get its attention. If you barge through, country will close for you. You're not going to see that manta ray. You're not going to see that shark.
Yeah.
Even all the reeds, everything will be still, close up for you. Birds won't even call out.
And that's why when you say spiritual is a silly word, it's because it's like for a fish, water is a silly word.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, for us, air is a kind of a silly word.
Yep.
Because it's, unless the wind is blowing, because we notice
it.
Because it's around you all the time. You're living immersed in a spirit world.
That's why I say informatic system instead, because people can conceptualize that because they're understanding about mycelia, and that they can understand if you're talking about a system of informatics, where they start to realize that, that bird call is going to bring this one in, and that insect is going to come to that color of flower, which is going to bring that bird there, Everything, every signal, every sound is signaling something else to alter their behavior, all the time. And so that's time, place. The time, the place is shifting. Every entity is a signal that's signaling everything else to behave in different ways. So when you come in and you call out for the place, you're making a sound, or you're making a boom, ripple with that stone that you throw in, or whatever it is that you're doing, the old people calling out for you. There's a signal that you're adding to that environment. And so you are putting your signal there, and then the environment starts to respond to that. And so it opens for you, because you're in the informatics of the system then.
Uh-huh.
So you're not even going to see what's going on, even though there's things going on. You won't see it until you're in that relation, and you can call it spirit if you want. You can call it whatever you like, but it just is.
It is
for us, like, people keep talking about Aboriginal spirituality, and I kind of like, we don't have a word for spirituality, and the words we have for spirit is usually about something really specific, not a general abstract noun about spirit, like we don't even have those concepts, because it's not a separate thing from the biological. It's just real. It's in the phenomenon. It's not just a belief of how the phenomena work. It's actually there. You can see it. You're acting upon it. You're calling out for the old people, and you're seeing the birds respond, in the place, because you made a sound and they're responding.
Yeah.
And then everything else is responding to that change in their flight, or, where they're sitting to watch you, and, and it changes how everything moves in the place, and then you're in that informatic system. That's I guess what people call in spirit, but it just is,
When you told a story about how some people trained the ravens on how to eat the cane toads properly first, because they're the smartest birds, and then they would teach all of the other birds how to do this. And this is reminding me of Rupert Sheldrake's work about the morphic resonance field and this idea that if once it's known in the collective conscious of the capital M mind of the planet or the species, et cetera, it's known.
Yeah.
And for you, this is just like, this is not something that's debated.
Yeah.
This is just like, this is just how it is. You teach a couple ravens how to do it. The ravens will then, that information will be downloaded to the other ravens. And it's just naturally how it goes. And I actually see that happening in multiple different ways now. For whatever reason, in the last year, my Instagram's been flooded with different reels of animals seeking humans to actually help them with a problem that they couldn't solve. Like pull a piece of plastic off something nose or get them, pull them out of some ditch that they couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
And it's happening more and more. Sea animals, all kinds of other manta rays signaling.
Being noticed more and more.
And it's happening more and more. And it's like, it feels like there's this almost morphic resonance shift of now the animals are becoming aware that there's people that can actually help, which I think is actually the highest calling of what we could do is we can do things. We can help animals that don't have hands.
These are all cooperative relations,
Right.
You look at, so I mean, how ecosystems are seen as like a series of, encounters between different classifications of beings that are like predator, prey, parasite, host, you know what I mean? And that's this zero-sum game, always. And it's like this competition between two things and one of them's going to win. And that's what they are. But, you have that predator and the prey animal, you see them drinking side by side, at the waterhole. You see that happen. You see during floods, you'll see a snake swimming in the water, and there'll be a mouse and a frog like sitting catching a ride on its back, and it's just giving a ride to those things. I make the joke though that it is just taking a packed lunch, but nah. It's just there's so much cooperative behavior goes on just naturally, and that's how the ecosystems work is, collaborative, cooperative, and every kill's for a reason. It's not a zero-sum game. It's attached to a whole host of other relationships. And there's never one thing having its lunch. It's like, that's always a lot of different things, where that animal's died. Every birth, every death, it's a signal, and it's an exchange of so much different, material and, energy and resources and signal going on with all these things. It's just, it's never just two things coming together.
What is your opinion, feeling, belief system, or the old ways belief system about, we've talked a little bit about some of the darker forces, which is the force of separate self, I, versus us two, versus this connectedness. So there's that force, but what about other forces that are actually seeking to confuse, delude, retard our growth in certain ways, restrict? What are the belief systems, that you have and the people of the old ways have about these maliciously intending energies?
Yeah. These are things that need to be contained, protected against, mitigated, to the point, and then lived with. It might mean you have to alter where you live, how you live, which way you walk. So there might be some bad entity coming to the swamp here through some black magic that's done, and that might be the place where you go to dig these yams to make dye, like there, and you just might have to alter that behavior. Those yams might need to grow somewhere else, or you might have to change the foraging pattern for the women that go and get those, and it might need to be a bigger group that goes down, and maybe the kids don't go. You have to alter your patterns around these things.
So it's
and then,
just like a part
but
of the
it's not just
natural
you,
life.
because
It's a
then
part
the
of
whole
ecosystem.
system has to change. So
Right.
those yams might need to grow in a different place. You know, like the whole system moves around it. And this is kind of the role of evil, is it's kind of a pattern breaker, you know, like creation, destruction, same thing. And that's always the role of the serpent beings. And you find this everywhere in the world. They're the connective entities, like all around the world. And they carry that same thing. They're neither good nor bad, you know, or they're both. Even in places where your dragon or your worm or your, you know, serpent entity is seen as something that's evil and has to be destroyed, then usually that's about calling on you to be really good and to balance. You know what I mean? It's calling on other entities to be creative, to offset the destructive side. So, you know, the serpent is still doing that. It's that creation and destruction going on. But you got to disrupt systems. Systems have to be disrupted. Patterns need to be broken. Otherwise, systems stagnate. You can't have a system that is just exactly the same forever, because that's just a dying thing then. You know, then suddenly there is a difference between time and place, and there is just, this is my property, these are my walls, these are my fences, nothing gets in, nothing gets out unless I say. It's like, well, everything there is going to die, you know? Yeah. So I guess even the evil of doing that is disrupting a system significantly. Yeah, so they always had this role of pattern breakers, those evildoers. And so they're in the stories going way back, you know, always. And they're not kind of hated things. They're kind of, you know, revered entities in the landscape, these wrongdoers, you know, because they hold the law for the wrongdoing that they did. They hold that story and they keep that cautionary tale and actually keep that law against doing what they did. So they're kind of revered for that. But that's when it's right way, you know, and things balance because they move, the pattern's broken. When the pattern's broken, it becomes more complex. And then the system has to like have these innovative responses and like immune responses. And then the system sort of changes a bit and it becomes a little bit more beautiful, becomes a little bit more complex. There's new symbioses have to form. So there's new relations and it complexifies, and then relatedness increases out of those disruptions.
I mean, the most interesting...
But when the system becomes a disruption, like just becomes an entirety of evil, and then there's the disruptive ones are just little isolated bits. I don't have any stories for that.
Well, we need to write that new story about how we reverse the large egregore of empire energy that's taken over. We need to write that story about how we actually overthrow that within ourselves and then overthrow that collectively, and how we actually, I mean, what an epic story to write. And then we get to be a part of it.
There is law for that, but it's in the interconnected stories, because the stories are big maps. And the stories come together like a patchwork quilt too, you know. So you might have the story for that bracken that we were walking through this morning. It was very poor, very damaged country we were walking through. And bracken is like a scab. You know, when the ground is really, really bad, that bracken will come in and it'll fix nitrogen there, and it'll just cover that ground and like heal and build up the soil. And gradually it'll die back and other things come through. So you always get this. You'll get a proliferation of a parasite or a proliferation of something where the population will explode in a place in response to a disturbance. And then that'll go through its cycle and then give rise to the other things coming back through, and the balance comes like that. It's like, you know, if you get a degraded, you know, if you've got some noxious pest that's choked out everything and taken over an entire waterway, you can't just go in and eradicate. You can't have that eliminationism going on. You can't just go, well, I'm going to genocide this plant.
Right.
This evil invasive pest. Like, we don't do it like that. We find the 2 or 3 native trees that are still there along that riverbank. And then you'll see around the native trees, there's still some native grasses. They're like the little islands. And so then you clear a path between those two trees and allow that corridor to happen with those grasses coming through. Then those birds come in and they drop the seeds. And then you burn a little bit of patch here one year. Then you burn a little patch here another year. And then those grasses come through. Birds come in for that. You don't plant trees. Like, we don't plant trees. It's like, we don't know where to put a tree. You know, how do you know what country wants? You know, you care for the place and you burn patches, you facilitate the birds to come in and put the seeds, the right seeds in the right place where country wants it to be. And you slowly build it like that. And that, just telling that little bit of, praxis, that little bit of design there for country, that's bringing about 20 different stories, different species together that I'm thinking through, as we go. Thinking about this kangaroo grass story. I only found out about it last week. A few different ones coming through there. And
tell it.
And then stuff that old fellow was talking about, Lamandra. The kangaroo grass, that's like, you see Bruce Pascoe here, he's got a company called Black Duck. And he's looking at, figuring out how to get everywhere growing back the kangaroo grass. So like you call them prairies, but the kind of savanna and grasslands that you have. And this was always harvested in the south down here for making bread, like tens of thousands of years before the Egyptians were making bread. They got those old grindstones, that's been harvested for bread forever. But it's gluten-free and it's really healing. Anyway, that story is about that grass as an entity, as a healer, and that the grass itself, heals people, heals places. Yeah. And so, but you don't bring that back by poisoning or digging out, all the kikuyu grass or like the invasive species that have been brought in for pastures. You don't eradicate something in order to, put back the ones that you think belong there from a sort of nativist perspective of biology. And and when something comes in, because things are always coming through, the same whales that are passing by here, they'll be on your side of the planet shortly, same birds are going back and forth. There's seeds dropping everywhere. There's all kinds of different pathogens going back and forth everywhere. It's these borders are fluid. These boundaries are fluid. So that's that old fella said sing the cane toad song, because that's only about a century old. That song, that Mimbula one, because that's that's about how we like our response to this invasive pest that everybody panics about, that has to be eradicated, and they have massive drives to kill as many cane toads as they can, but they just keep spreading and spreading. Like our response to that is like we're teaching the crows, doing ceremony to signal, teaching the crows how they need to respond to this poisonous animal, and how they have to flip it over and eat the guts out, but beware of the poison sacs. How the toads need to move, how they need to, avoid being, dead in a waterway, all these kinds of things. So it's about managing the landscape and working with country to figure out new symbioses for these cane toads and how they're going to come into the system. And they turn out to be really beneficial with a lot of, so a lot of frogs are, really delicate part of the ecosystem, eh? And, with a lot of the changes to the environment, changes to climate, they're really vulnerable to things like lungworm. So lungworm's just a natural parasite, but they're succumbing to it. more readily because they're already under stress from other stuff. Cane toad helps out with that because cane toad's resistant to lungworm. So like, those parasites will go into the cane toad instead of into the frog. So it's taking a lot of stress off the frog population. Yeah.
This understanding of resilience, I mean, I think we look at nature as if we need to solve it. We need to go in here and fix this thing rather than working with nature as you're talking about to actually be in conversation. It's the same thing with the body.
Yep.
You got a cancer cell. All right, let's put in these fucking radiation. Let's put in this chemo. Let's kill, eradicate, change, inject, pill, whatever these things are. But actually, we're an ecosystem. We have a mycobiome of fungus and a microbiome of bacteria and all of the cells and all of the different intelligence that we have. And if actually we start to trust the intelligence of ourselves more as well, then we'll become healthier.
Yep.
I mean, this thinking is like, it's a universal way of thinking that's different than the current model we have. And it's like a fundamental revolution of consciousness that I think applies not just to the environment, but it applies to personal health. It applies to relationships. It applies to everything. How do you work with what's there?
Well, so I'm talking about being in relation, with all of creation, So, when you're in relation with the reality, like the creation around you, that's not, I don't know. So if you're doing your practice and you're like, and you're feeling, I'm connected, I'm a child of the universe, I'm connected to that tree, and I feel calm. It's like, but if you feel calm, you're not connected. It's like frustration signals, like all through this creation, It's so disrupted that you're not going to be calm. Like you feel calm to get out of it. If you're using ceremony to get this ecstatic loop and feel like, I feel connected and I feel calm. It's like, well, you're taking a holiday for a minute. So, and that's good, do that ceremony. But don't bring that altered state back here because that's not going to help us. Right. You're not going to be in relation when you're in the creation.
That's the role of the shaman, is to drink the poison to heal the poison, right?
Here's your cancer. Yeah. Here's your cancer. There's that maximum power principle. Everything in the system, is going to do its Nietzschean best, to that will to power. Every single entity and every speck in the system is going to do its best to be the best example of itself that it can be, but to the limit of the system of relations around it, But when one of those little things, a mouse, a bloody liver cell, that goes like all of a sudden, well, no, ngay, I'm me. Stuff all you other cells around me, and stuff all these other organs. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make my own lung. I'm going to make my own lung in your balls.
Yeah.
You are in that reality. You are in that reality. And, here's the problem with a lot of my earlier work. I'm promoting, like I'm talking about how amazing bush medicine is, and this natural health. But that only works in the bush,
Right.
We have medicine and, that's in time, place with seasonal bioavailability, when you're mixing it with the diet of that season in that place. That's when it's optimal. That's when it works. I can't crush it up, put it in a tablet and sell it to some bastard over there and think that some Russian's going to cure his cold with my billy goat plum. It's not going to work, Things are, you can't be out of your context. You can't be out of your time and place. And our time and place here is we're in a freaking city. We're in civilization, and in civilization, there's no bush medicine for syphilis. I'm going to want to get a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ayurveda is lovely in that time place for Ayurveda. But, you know, if I've just been diagnosed with cancer, I'm not just going to want to switch to a raw juice diet and just, you know, go, this will help me, this will cure me. Like, yes, do that. But, you know, Steve Jobs didn't have to fucking die. Like, he didn't have to die. His cancer was really treatable, like with a really minimally invasive early surgery, maybe a bit of radiation to follow up to just for good luck, you know, and he could have had all his raw juice and Ayurveda and get his foot rubs and not have a bath, you know, could have done that as well, but he decided to go the alternative medicine route, and so now we don't have Steve Jobs, you know. He regretted that towards the end. He went, oh, shit, probably should have had the surgery, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I got in a car crash and they had to do things, give me antibiotics, stitch my face back up. There's a time and a place for all of the different tools that we have. It's not that the tools are bad, but it's an embracing of everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to digress into the conversation of cancer, but it is
like you got to be in your context.
You got to be in your context. You know? And also there's a lot of information about, so a cancer cell, just to go briefly in this short digression, Travis Christofferson's done some amazing work based on the work from Otto von Warburg about the metabolic theory of cancer. So a cancer cell, most cancer cells, they start actually fermenting sugar to create the energy to produce more cancer cells.
Yeah.
So they're in this fermentation of sugar rather than connecting to the ATP energy that naturally comes from the mitochondria. So the theory is that the mitochondria are weakened to such a state that the cells can't get enough energy. So they say, fuck this, stuff this. I need to survive. Nang. I need to survive. I'm going to ferment sugar inside my cell, which is a primitive way that, you know, single-celled organisms used to survive.
Yeah.
And then so they start doing that, and then they lose connection. So part of this actual revolution is, yes, okay, you can do your radiation or chemo or whatever, but if you look at this one principle and say, okay, your cells, these cancer cells are your cells, they're not getting enough energy. So how do you rehabilitate the mitochondria? Well, restricted ketogenic diets, you know, getting more ketone energy through, doing hyperbaric oxygen to actually stimulate your mitochondria again, to actually start supplying more energy. And then you can actually start to give the cells more energy. So then they go, oh, I don't need to nang anymore. I can actually be connected to the whole. So there's a way that these things can actually weave. Yeah. And then there's also the kind of woo-woo side of things. Like, let me eat fucking peach pits and, you know, this is going to fix it, which is, it's not exactly that. So there's this whole other cooperative way of looking at things that's using technology. Yeah. You know, like at breakfast today, I was showing you a technology from my friend Mickey Agrawal and Hero Technologies that has this fungus that eats plastic, right? Like that was developed, you know, and worked within a lab that's going to help solve this problem of plastic. And this is a technology, but it's also a natural way to do something that's a major problem that we have. And I think the solutions are going to come from a blend of both the old ways and the new ways, time and place, a remembering of the past and the deep past, and the best of what we can innovate in the future.
Problem happens when we create bifurcations, like false binaries around these things.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
And we use those little tricky rhetorical devices that everybody responds to, of like, you know, old ways good, new ways bad, you know, that what do they call it, ad antiquitatem fallacy. Like freaking Aristotle had a word for this shit. It's been around for a while, you know. Natural good, unnatural bad. Like, but you know, if your idea is being in relation with all creation, what exactly is unnatural? So the boomerangs they gave you today, are they unnatural? Like, that's a technology. That's not just a tree. You know, that's something that's been made and cut. You know, are they natural? Like, shit, I don't know what's natural and what's not. You start to do these bifurcations. and like you shit coat something and then you sugarcoat something else, and you just you're not telling a lie, you're just shifting that focus and that importance and
Yes.
that value
Yes.
onto something, and you're skewing. And once you do that, same way a signal in the system around you, like one signal can cascade change everything. Same way as that, once you shift that perspective of something, then that everything else shifts. And then you end up with a worldview that, you know, is like, it's not quite, it's just out of step with the reality a little bit.
Yep.
And then if you got someone who knows how to manipulate that, who can like Cambridge Analytica the shit out of that, you know, somebody who knows how to press them buttons and just shift the perspective a bit, nudge it this way, nudge it this way, nudge it this way, and then start to herd all those cats together until you've got like a big mass of disgruntled bastards who all want to do a little bit of street violence, you know, on your behalf. You can, that's where it's gone, like over the last decade, like really strong. You know, it's that ability to manipulate and shift that perspective, shift the system, you know, that way. So how do you get it back? How do you like, you know, do you eradicate all that? You know, like we know that eliminationism doesn't work. You're not going to just frickin' shoot every cane toad and like that they're going to be gone. Like it's, no, the cane toads are here. So how do you shift? How do you move? How do you allow co-design with country, with creation? How do you co-design to move around those things, bring those things in, connect those things back up, make the symbiosis happen? How do you?
It's a consciousness shift.
Pattern it all through.
It's the fundamental consciousness shift that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That is going to be upstream of all the downstream solutions.
Yeah.
That are going to have. But this shift in consciousness that we're talking about, this is the thing. Like this is the thing. And what I'm excited about is I feel this thing emerging. I feel this like starting to bloom where people are starting to get this. In an interesting way. And that gives me some optimism. And I think contact with truth, I think is also really, really important. And you can contact truth in a lot of different ways, but you have to contact truth at some point. And you can contact truth. You know, I was picked up this morning at an ungodly hour. I've never gotten up this early for anything before. But at 4:45, Brendo was there in his truck, and he's a boogie board, big wave surfer. He's contacting truth. He had a big scar on his arm from surfing the gnarliest, 20-ton wave, that he paddled into and got mangled in the coral. And he was happy about it because there was truth in that wave. And there's truth in the fight. Like if you're in a fight and you're like, call the people, there's truth in a fight. There's truth in a psychedelic medicine journey. There's truth in a sweat lodge. There's truth in a time where you're really walking in a walkabout in nature and you're really listening. You got to contact truth at some point to help reorient the system. And I think that's one of the key things is like you have to find the ways, in as many ways as possible, to contact different truths and the wild truth of existence.
You can't do that on your own. Unfortunately.
Yes.
And you can't do it like, you got to have those relations and you got to be one belly. And you all bring in your different data sets to the table that goes in the middle, and then that's processed together.
You're really sounding like a bridge person
intuitively now. Ritually, but then you still don't decide. Like the old fellas decide, like they'll see the pattern there that you don't see because they have the deep law, so it's something communally that has to happen in the collective. But I was talking to you about that last night, those groups of around half a dozen people, 5 people or so. So your hearth group, they're the people who are like you, like they're your people, like, we're the same, like, brother, sister, husband, wife, like, mother, daughter, auntie, like you're all around that same hearth there. That's your hearth group. They're the people you camp with, but they're not the people that you hunt with. They're not the people you forage with. burn country with, or do different things that require problem solving and lots of data processing. You don't do that with the people who are like you. You have groups, forage groups form from the other fires, the ones that are further out, the ones who are different from you, the ones from another clan, from another language group, because there's always people coming through, mixing, mingling, doing business. So it's got to be, your foraging group's got to have like young, old, different kinds of thinkers, people with very different totems, maybe very different, land that they speak for and know really well, because they're all going to have a different eye, on different things, and so together you can process a lot more, and you have more diverse lore and story to draw on, and, together you can actually, you can do better problem solving. You're going to be more successful in that hunt or in whatever you're trying to do.
And how are you going to serve us too if you don't see through everybody else's eyes and their perspective and really understand? That's something that we've really failed at, collectively, I would say, is really seeing through other people's eyes during all of these complex issues. Like let's really listen. What are they really feeling? What are they afraid of? What are they seeing?
We're trying to process and problem solve in our hearth groups, our close kin affiliate groups, politically or culturally or any other way, and we sort of really need to be more in those diverse foraging groups, if we're going to solve problems. Yeah. We just need a new word, because diversity means something else now. It's got a bit of stink on it, Yeah.
Yeah, because it's been superficial.
Yeah.
It's been the superficial diversity.
Yeah.
Rather than the actual diversity.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can have 5 people, all men, all the same skin color, who can be wildly diverse, and you can have a black man, a white woman, a Chinese transgender person, and they could actually all be the same hearth group. They could actually be less diverse.
Yeah.
Ultimately, fundamentally, it's not about the superficial structure. It's about the depth structure of diversity. And this is one of the beautiful things about, I reading Sand Talk and encountering you, is you're coming with a unique worldview and a unique, diverse set of ideas and ways to think that make my mind go, and some things I'm super resonant with, I feel, and some things I'm like, whoa, never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
And that's really critical, I think, in this time.
It's those bits that rub the wrong way that'll trouble and disrupt and, level up, wherever that's troubling.
Yeah.
Not like change your mind or force you to go the other way. And that's where I've been trying to concentrate, changing with my writing, moving more away from persuasion, coercive persuasion, and try to just do little troubling bits. But I always try and do, when I do something to trouble somebody, then I'll flip it and go the other way as well. I'll try and do the opposite. So I'll really go through and sort of push one idea, and then I go, but on the other hand, that's kind of bullshit because of this, and then, you can see people running along with, yes, that's exactly how I feel. That's right. And then I trip them up at the end. So that's why I was saying, I don't think I'm a bridge. I think I'm a trickster. I think I'm a, because I'll put the bridge there and say, come onto the bridge. Come onto the bridge. Come onto the bridge. It's fine. And then I yank that bridge away and I fall. So, see, now you're learning how to swim. And then I'm like, well, who am I to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to go through a rapid fire set of different concepts to just to touch in on some things that, Yeah, for me, this is just for me. Okay, so let's go through some of the most important things that happen in a human's life. Birth in the old way. And let's just take these short 3 minutes each. What's birth like in the old way?
Trees, aunties, grandmothers. Yeah. Collective. Yeah. We all have several mums in our kinship system. So, there's your mum that gives birth to you, but your big mums are her elder sisters and your little mums are her younger sisters. Yeah. And then all of those sisters, their kids, they're not your cousins, they're your brothers and sisters. So birth, is a circle of women, with highly specialized knowledge, but also non-human people. And I can't know much about that because that's women's business, and they do that. And I know often a tree is involved, birthing tree. That is really important part of that process, but I can't speak to that. Yeah.
Sex.
That's, hey, love magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of story around that as sorcery that's sort of become part of the popular imagination. So a lot of us believe that side of it, that love magic's just this kind of spiritual date rape drug or something, a spiritual roofie, forcing someone to fall in love with you, or pickup artists, but with magic.
So that's part of the that's part of the old lore.
But that's the sorcery part. That's that bad actors part,
right?
That's the small part. And then, but all love magic now, a lot of people just think of that, but love magic is more than that. Love magic is something most of the love magic lore is kept by the old ladies, they're the ones, they're the ones who can tell you how to do it right, and how to do the rocking and the rolling and where and how and when, yeah. Yeah, the old ladies, they carry a lot of that love magic sort of stuff, and they'll tell the dirtiest stories, and it's really open, traditionally, and you find it's when there's no non-Aboriginal people around, then there's all the jokes and then the rude stories and laughing, and really quite open and frank about sex, kids, they hear it. And they'll laugh about it too, so kids will know about sex from quite a young age, they'll know everything about that, from all the, love stories and things like that. Most of our dreaming stories have got a lot of sex in them, that they're, yeah. Yeah, most dreaming, if you hear a version of a dreaming story where nobody's fucking, then it's, that's that's a sanitized
been
version.
Redacted.
Yeah, sex is everything's having sex all the time. That's creation. Yeah. And not just for procreation. That's the thing. Sex, love magic's going on all the time.
Yes.
Everything's fucking, and for fun. And in lots of different ways. Not just once a year to make another baby.
Right.
Yeah. It's,
right.
Sex is one of those things that powers, creation. Love magic is just,
yeah.
And people who have that love magic, you feel it. It's, it's a hard thing though to carry that love magic if that's how you do your work spiritually, if that's how you flow. It's a hard thing to carry because you got to keep it clear.
You got to keep it clean.
That Yunkaporta I was talking about before, when you fight, that's about, you got to clear all the time. You got to keep that belly clear.
Mm-hmm.
So when those emotions come in, move them through. And there's a lot of stuff that can get all jacked up in there from love magic and from sex. There's a lot of confusions. A lot of things can sit there like a stone and become a fetish and become a just wrong way sort of focus. I was talking before, just giving things a different weight and skewing that perspective a bit. You skew that sexual perspective out, and that's everything. That's everything changed for your whole life. Your sexuality is like, that's who you are. That's how you are. But that's also how you're in relation. And if your sexuality is skewed, tilted, sick, then it makes wrong relations all around you, If you have to cover it up, how you actually really are in spirit, in your sexuality, if you have to adjust it or sanitize it for other people or, deny it or suppress it, it's the worst. Everything gets sick.
Well, that could account for a lot of sickness.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of deep repression and deep, since all the...
It's the mitochondria in the cell, and you start fermenting the sugars and...
Yeah.
And then you need more sugar. Give me some sugar, baby. Give me some sugar, baby.
Yeah. The pseudo-eros, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, I sent you... We did... friend, Nyunga woman, artist, and we did like a anthology, an erotic anthology about love magic a few months ago. But we got no idea what to do with it. We're like, fuck, we probably can't print this anyway. Because
I'll fucking print it.
She did the paintings for it.
Let's go. Chakaruna Books.
She did the paintings for it. And they're like, she's the sweetest girl, and all her work is just like, just all these beautiful, paintings.
If you need someone to print it.
She was just doing these really like explicit like scenes, Yeah, so we've got those ones as well.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I'll check your WhatsApp. I sent you a link to
Let's go.
Google Doc, early part. Yeah, because she sent me a message and I went, I should show Aubrey that.
Perfect. Yeah. Marriage.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to love magic. That's man, woman who marry the right way. You got to marry the right way. You got to marry diagonal, not across, and definitely not vertical.
Okay, you got to explain this.
Not in the same. You got to marry out of that hearth.
Uh-huh.
It's the same as that foraging group, kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, you got to marry.
The diversity.
You got to marry unlike.
Uh-huh.
And marry the right way, and then that sort of goes around in time. There's a whole algorithm for it.
And what about the ceremony itself?
So we took the Murray marriage algorithm like a couple of years back, and we made it the selector. We made it the selection system for a genetic computing thing, and we ran the genetic computing through, and so because how they just splice, like each generation they splice randomly different algorithms together, and then they see what happens after like 1,000 generations. Well, we ran that as the selection operator, the marriage law system. We ran that as the selection operator to see what kind of algorithms would come out. And they were like huge, like weird, esoteric, clunky, slow-ass algorithms that were really complicated and didn't appear to have any apparent use. But they were very pretty. Yeah. But no, man, woman, that's, husband, wife, partners coming together. That's what keeps fire going in the universe. That makes fire.
Mm-hmm. What about the ceremony itself? What's that?
Because we have it different in lots of places. But I mean that involves. So we have avoidance relations with our in-laws. So as an Aboriginal man, you never have to talk to your mother-in-law, which is kind of good. You're not really supposed to. You can't hand them anything directly.
Wow.
But they have power of life and death over you.
Wow.
Kind of as well. So you can't mistreat, that woman. You can't do wrong by her because, they'll just go, boom.
You never get annoyed by them, but if you fuck up, they could kill you.
Yeah. Or just order your death and you're dead, Yeah. Wow. And that's even in because there's matrilineal cultures, even in the patrilineal ones. That's, yep. It's that they got that say over life and death with you. So, so there's exchanges that have to happen and, there's sometimes different ceremonies that have to happen. There's parts of it happen in even in the men's ceremonies with like initiation, where there's certain things that happen that I can't say that will be like somebody will be selecting you for promise, to promise to somebody, and when you promise, even if you're a kid and you promise to another kid for marriage, then that's always there. Like that's a marriage. Even if you never do it, even if you marry someone else, you're still in that marital relation. Like that's still, like your kids will still call her mum, Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Really interesting. All right. Death and grief. Grieving.
And grief. Yeah. Well, we're very high-functioning mourners, which we have to be now because it's constant. There were 2 murders in my family last year.
I'm so sorry.
And so that's you've got to go. You've got to go back. But there's a really good grieving process. There's stuff that you do collectively. So the totemic sort of dance that all your mob does around the coffin, those dances and that cycle just repeats. So all together, everybody doing that. That gets that one belly thing happening. And then death wail, and that's as long as it takes. And that's everyone together, and then different groups coming in, in-law group, all different groups coming in, and you might be that sibling group. You're all coming in, brothers and sisters. You do that death wail. You do that together in the different sort of larger groups, smaller groups.
Is just the complete.
It's like, and it just hits this frequency. It's like this vibration, and you feel it go through you, but you're connected to everyone else too through the dances and from everything else. And you that wail, you just do it for as long as you need, everybody. And then there's this settle, and then, so that's that first part. And then it's like, about 6 months, next part, and then a few months, next part, so after about 6 months, then there's, the places where that person, like if that person went to this particular beach, that's like nobody goes to that beach now, 6 months. Nobody says that person's name. So after that first thing, you can't see an image of them. You can't say their name. If somebody else has the same name, then they got to change their name for 6 months, or you have a replacement word.
Is that to make sure that you're not keeping that spirit attached to this realm? Is that like allowing them to go transition from this?
With all the different ceremonies and different times with the death and onwards, different parts of spirit are going to different places. But there's that shadow spirit. That's the one you don't want hanging around. That's got to dissipate. That's all the ego stuff and the attachment, personality stuff, all the dark shit and whatever. People always talking to their deceased ones and calling them. And it's like, no, don't do that. Because even if they're really nice, like they make you sick, just their presence will make you sick. So we got to get rid of that one and avoid it. And so that's really hard, It's like you're, breaking an addiction kind of thing. And so it takes stages, and then there's different ceremonies. There's that one that for us mobbing in there, there's a law pole that you cut it, and then there's a E with each cut, on this big painted law pole. And with each one, then you're calling out the names for the first time of that person. And then after you've done that, then everyone can say the name again. Then that's one ceremony. And then there's a whole heap of other ones that follow after that, where after about a year, you're good, you're done. You're not feeling like you go full into the grief.
Yeah.
But it's that ceremony thing where, what happens in ceremony stays in ceremony. Mm-hmm. You don't carry that old it stayed out, you know?
Yeah.
So you get to leave it there and then go and drive your forklift like you're supposed to pay the rent.
Someone does something wrong. What is the law? What is the punishment? What is if someone steals something, if someone hurts somebody, how is that handled?
Well, it can be with the fights, like for little stuff, like that. Someone keeps doing it. Someone will call them out and then there'll be the fights. But it'll also just be that person just gets in bad relation, and usually that just that collective relatedness will just steer them back in. So usually it's just self-correcting, like your cancer cells turn into moles and then they stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of crimes, just people turn into moles. But then if they need to be cut out, then they got to get cut out in the end. And it could be just temporary that they need to go, all right, boy, you're going for a season. You're going to stay at that beach. You stay there at that beach on your own. We'll bring you food from time to time. But that's where you are. That still happens now. Yeah. Like even in my family, sometimes, it'll be that person just has to leave and they just got to go and camp over there. Maybe, someone will go and sit with them for a week, and then gradually when they've sorted themselves out, they can come back in. Yeah. So there's sort of little temporary banishments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seasonal holidays or important holiday that are really meaningful, not just like the superficial. I don't know if you have superficial holidays like we do, but
yeah,
like holy days.
Well, ceremony is seasonal. So like it's pretty general around, especially East Coast here, top to bottom. It's you come around September, October. It's usually ceremony season in there, and that'll be time when, men have to go off to their places to do that. And, you got your secret stuff that you do there. Like
so
that.
There's like an annual ceremonial time.
Yeah, there's different ceremonies, different seasons all the time. So there'll be different season to burn this country over here, like burn the grass to regenerate. And that'll be in this season. And that's what we're doing. But there's always something, there isn't a week where there isn't something seasonal going on, which that's the activity. And then there's just death, like we remember the people who've passed. And so at that time we do things for them. And that, a lot of that's translated into, you look at the date on your phone and it's like, oh, that's old mum's birthday who passed away, So I'm going to go and have a drink for her. And then, that's the day she passed away. I'm going to go and have a drink for her. And there's always a reason to have a bit of a drink too.
Yeah.
So many people passed away. There's always a date.
Yeah. Coming of age.
Coming of age. Yeah, well, that's different. Now a lot of initiation that was prohibited, with a lot of the missionaries and, a lot of the police intervention and people being locked on reserves weren't allowed to practice those kind of things. Was seen as barbaric and primitive and anti-Christian and devilry and all that kind of thing. So
that must mean
a lot of people,
they used to be really good.
Yeah, for most mobs, it's done. And it's different for different kinds of mobs.
Well, okay, so take us back pre-missionary, pre-interruption.
Yep.
What were the old ways?
Women do their things, and I have no idea what that is. And then men do our things, and pretty much 99.9% of that I can't say what that is. But
okay,
you know,
but
a lot of it.
there's a certain time. Is there like an age? And I fully respect the privacy of these
I mean,
things.
some people say it's like a really precise, calendar kind of age, but it's, it's always like groups of young men going through, and they might be at different ages between, 12 to 17, going through around there. Just from what I know, what I've seen, there might be people who missed initiation before and they're coming back, try again. So it'd be different ages. But usually, as you're sort of, coming in heavy into puberty, then that's when you go through first time or just before. And you do that move into adulthood. You become adult. There are often scarifications involved. But then, it doesn't just stop. There's so many different levels of initiation. Even old people are going through, initiated into new levels, and then they get different scars. So you can read from an old man's scars, like, how senior they are in the law,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They got these ones here and these ones here, and they might go right down, Yeah. And you can say, oh, he's been through all of those.
Like rings of a tree.
Yeah. So you know that they have that knowledge. And for some of us, it's like, the men's stuff is like, that we have our own womb, and that we're giving birth to the younger fellas. We're birthing them into manhood, kind of thing. But then there's also, like, I don't know, like we have spirit children as well, which are like, I don't know, I can't really go into all that stuff, but it's pretty full on, that sort of spiritual reproductive role of men.
Well, thanks for sharing all this. As we close here, if you could say, all right, let's just get really pragmatic here. We've talked a lot about like kind of a meta change in consciousness, which I think is, one of the most important takeaways from this conversation, the interconnectedness, all of the things that we've discussed, the state of inner being, as Eisenstein would say. And I don't think he got that from somewhere else. But what would be something that, or something or some things that are just a way of life for you that you could say, hey, just do these or this one thing, and your life will be richer. The earth will be better. What's something that people can do?
Ants.
Yeah.
Follow the ant, like pay close attention to the ants, and you get an idea about how time and place are one thing. You learn that from the ants and watching them, and you'll be able to, you do that for a few months. You'll be able to predict the weather. You'll be able to do all kinds of things. You follow the ants and you watch what they're doing, and you'll find how they interact with all the other things. And then you'll build that relation to everything. I always say you always start with the ants. They're the ones, they're the teachers. Yeah. For bringing you back into that relation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know, this idea that people are lost and, oh my God, the whole world's lost and we've forgotten who we are. It's like, well, who's this we? Some people have forgotten who they are, and they just happen to be the people in charge. It's like the rest of us are still here. We know. We didn't lose our way. We don't need freaking aliens to fucking help us out or anything like that, We don't need them angels or anything like that. We're good. We're here. We know we keep the law. We've got the law, and, we want to share it and bring people back into that law. It's all here. It's still here. Everyone's ways. And people go, oh, but I'm white, I can't. I'm like, fucking, what even is that? What even is that? Like, I know so many European people is still so strong in their law, in the old law, you know, like just the work, you know, we've been doing in embassy with Irish law keepers, Irish knowledge keepers, and like they know their stuff. They still got it. They got everything there. I've seldom seen, you know, there's French Basques, there's bloody Spanish Basques, there's bloody, I don't know a European people that doesn't still have law. It's there, you know, just pick it up if you want to go that way, or be where you are, be like your place and come into it, come under the law of the land where you are, because it's there, people have got it.
And that idea that there is the law, that there is first values, first principles, that there's something real, there's meaning, there's these first values and principles that exist, and there's many different facets and ways to approach it, but that it's real.
And you don't have to be special, you know, that's the main thing. People feel like they've lost, you know, culture or lost connection if they're not the shaman, like, you know what I mean? Like they feel like, well, I have to learn more. It's like, no, you just, if you know the ants where you live, if you know everything about them ants, that's enough, you know? That's enough. You don't have to be special. You don't have to be the one who carries it all. There are people who are holding that, you know? I mean, different people know different shit. Like, just be happy with it. Be be there, and be together. If you're seeking, like, on your own, then you won't find anything. You know, you can't learn anything on your own. You got to be, it's got to be us. You got to be in an us, and doing that, and in a few different us groups, moving around doing different shit. Well, nothing's gonna happen, you know. And if you're doing that, all right, it's like, oh, what? Yeah, no, well, you're doing it. That's it. Finished. It's pretty easy. I don't know what it should be. It should be easy. But there's bastards out there messing with our heads.
Indeed. Well, this has been amazing, man.
Yay.
Thanks for the last 2 days, brother.
Hey.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was good.
I got to pay a lot more attention to the ants.
Yep.
That's for sure. But thanks for sharing your ways, and thanks for sharing your heart and your spirit. I'm better for it.
Old fellas were happy to bring you in.
Yeah,
today, and like they give you the nod, so it's like, we're all good.
I feel very blessed.
Yeah,
I feel very blessed, and hopefully I can, return whatever gifts that I have and whatever teachings that I can bring. And
I think you've already done it. There's been exchange, things exchanged,
as the borderlands are supposed to be.
Yeah, that's it.
Gifts and knowledge and laughter and
and new relations.
Thank you, my brother.
Yo.
Thank you, everybody. We love you. We'll see you next week.
I won't.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.